Nomads don't just live differently, they see themselves as different, and that changes everything. One young man from an American tribe said, "Wow, you're finally helping me understand myself." That's what nomadic distinctiveness can do. Welcome to Let Nomads Move You, the podcast that takes you on a journey into the lives, cultures, and wisdom of nomadic peoples around the world. I'm Ron, your nomad guy. For over 30 years, I've walked alongside nomads, learning from their deep connections to Scripture, their heritage of mobility, and the lessons they offer for faith, community, and modern life. Trust me, it hasn't always been easy. I've made some painful mistakes along the way, but those experiences have transformed the way I see God, the world, and even my own faith. Each week, we'll uncover how the nomadic way of life can inspire you to rethink your worldview, reconnect with biblical themes, and find fresh purpose in a restless, often fractured world. So, if you're ready to let nomads move you, challenge your thinking, and ignite your faith, this is the podcast for you. Let's go. Welcome to Let Nomads Move You, the podcast where we explore what the world's nomads can teach us about life, Scripture, and following the Good Shepherd. I'm Ron, your nomad guide, and in today's episode, we're unpacking what makes nomads distinct by design. From mobility and community to autonomy and faith, these values have shaped generations, and they're still alive today. If you're curious about how to live with more purpose and how nomadic insight can shape ministry and mission, subscribe and join us at nomadicpeoples.net or courses.nomadicpeoples.net. Let's get started. Nomads, distinct by design. What sets them apart and what can we learn? Introduction. What makes a people distinct? Language? Physical features? Specific traditions and ways of behaving? What makes you and your people distinct or different from any other ethnic group? For nomads, this question is not just about survival, and it isn't merely about acting different. It's about identity, purpose, and calling. Even when they settle, their sense of being set apart remains strong, woven into their stories, proverbs, and traditions. They may still think like nomads for 4 or more generations. What is it that makes nomads different? How much of that distinctiveness is revealed in the nomads in the Bible? How does this distinctiveness affect relationships with nomads today? After talking about nomadic distinctiveness, I have met 3 different people married to a nomad who responded that I had finally helped them understand certain areas of conflict in their marriage. I've also met nomads themselves who didn't consider themselves as nomads because they had been settled for a generation or 2. Through our conversations, some realized for the first time that their nomadic heritage still drove their values. One young man from an American tribe with a strong nomadic heritage exclaimed, "Wow, you are finally helping me understand myself." So it is important to make clear, although it is about how they see mobility, it is not just about moving. Their sense of being set apart is reflected in many aspects of their culture, mindset, and faith. Section 1. Distinct in identity. What defines a nomad? Let's take a minute to review our working definition of nomads. Naturally networking, organized in clans, tribes, mobility as resource, autonomous and self-sufficient, distinct from sedentary people. Today we are highlighting this last item, the aspect of being distinct. By now you should realize that nomads don't just live differently, they see themselves as different. While this distinct identity links to their mobility, it also includes their collectivist clan structures and their cultural values of autonomy and resilience. Their clan structure makes plural pronouns more prominent than singular pronouns. In an Asian nomadic community, some friends were pleased about how I was learning from them. So one day they asked me to tell them about things that I had learned. After hearing several positive stories, they said, "Okay, Ron, we're glad you are learning so many good things about us, but tell us something bad, something you think is not good about our culture." Well, I tried to sidestep the question, but we were going to be walking for another hour or so, and they kept on asking me to tell them some negative thing that I had heard. So I confessed that I kind of played a game on them. I told them that I had learned what seemed to be a very bad word in their culture. Of course, they wanted to know. Of course, they wanted to know what that word might be. I explained that I can't say that word out loud. My mother used to wash my mouth out with soap when I said bad words. They said, "Don't worry, we won't do that to you." Then I told them I couldn't say that word with ladies and children present. So the men told all the ladies and children to back up. Well, I felt cornered. I looked over my shoulder to the left and to the right. Then I leaned in close and whispered their word for mine. Well, you should have seen them. They were all duly shocked and appalled, and they all agreed, no, we should never use that awful word. This concept is actually true for most of what we call the majority world. To be explicit, this means that the majority of Earth's population thinks collectively, not individualistically. So look back at our 5-part definition of nomads. If your mind hasn't clicked on this yet, nomadic, networking, mobility, autonomy, and distinct are all interlaced with organized by clan or tribe. Another English word that also starts with O and sums this up is our. Networking is for our community's benefit and protection. Mobility is a resource for our community. Our community is autonomous from others, and we value our distinctive heritage. I've invented another acronym, NOAD, which is nomad without the mobility, and describes most collectivist cultures that are settled. Look for more about that in my next episode. Section 2. Distinct in Culture. How nomads see themselves. Most human groups share a sense of us versus them, including nomads. Many nomadic groups see themselves as part of an ancient, honored heritage. Only a few lament their nomadic heritage as having resulted, for example, from an ancestor who was cursed to roam, sort of like Cain after murdering his brother. Recall episode 3, Organized by Clan. Even when settled, they uphold their identity through traditions, clothing, and oral histories. This self-perception unites them, but creates boundaries also with outsiders. There may be contradictions in the perception of their own mobility. I mentioned in episode 4 on mobility and digital nomads that settled nomads may admire their mobile counterparts for preserving tradition while simultaneously looking down on that lifestyle as backward. Many Pashtun in urban India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan romanticize their nomadic heritage but are unwilling to return to such a lifestyle today, seeing themselves as more civilized now. Nomads considered themselves distinct back in Bible times too. Can you name one of the good guys in the Bible who was not a nomad? Think through our nomad definition. Then put your answers in the comments below. Most people struggle with this one and don't get it right. Give it a try. Think about how often God used nomads like Abraham, Moses, and David to demonstrate what it means to live as a distinct people. Their mobility and distinct identity enabled them to depend on God, trust His provision, and serve as witnesses to the nations. They were in a position to be a witness to many nations precisely because they ended up traveling and interacting with so many. In another episode, I will point out several places where biblical nomads spread faith in God, the Creator, who is just, merciful, and shepherds those who walk humbly with Him. Section 3. Distinct in Faith. Why God chose nomads in Scripture. Take a look at God's pattern of choosing nomads. The lives of Abraham, Moses, and Jesus show a divine preference for working through people on the move. Mobility enabled them to remain unattached to worldly power structures, relying on God for their needs. Their distinctiveness made them effective witnesses, different from the settled nations around them. They were nomadic pastoralists, and God often identified himself as their supreme shepherd. How many stories can you think of that exemplify the adage, "Where God guides, he provides"? Consider some of the nomadic values that are aligned with biblical themes. Collectivism, strong extended family, and community bonds reflect God's covenantal promises. His covenants were never intended to be applied individualistically. Mobility, a reminder to trust in God's provision, as seen in the Exodus and Jesus' ministry. Remember that mobility was enshrined in the law itself. They were required to make pilgrimages to Jerusalem at least once every year. This left a yearning for Jerusalem, no matter where in the world they ended up as diaspora peoples. Consider also the Feast of Booths. The word there actually is a word for tent, simply. Tents are mentioned as common dwellings even in the New Testament. Who were Priscilla and Aquila making tents for, as far away as Rome, and even after leaving Rome? Then Paul, quite naturally, joined them, apparently already knowing the trade. God himself seems to prefer tents as a dwelling through the time of Moses and David, and again in the book of the Revelation. Autonomy. This is a posture of humility, not arrogance. It has to do with reliance on God rather than on human systems of control. I have seen many shepherds demonstrate love and kindness to their sheep and goats. But during migration, a shepherd will always sharply rebuke their animals for one action. When a goat or sheep begins to wander away from or even ahead of the shepherd, such individualistic autonomy or autonomy from God is not tolerated. Take a look at Ezekiel 34. Section 4. The shepherd's call to us today. As followers of the Good Shepherd, we are called to live as distinct people in the world. Consider how to maintain distinctiveness in a world that erases differences through global communications, travel, and attempts to replace minority cultures with huge dominant cultures. How can you show that you value a nomadic culture? How will that affect your witness to them? How can understanding nomadic distinctiveness challenge us to live differently? What does this mean for you who might be called to reach nomads? Recognize and respect their distinct identity. Learn their history, proverbs, and worldview to build bridges. Be prepared to honor their heritage even as you share Jesus. The Good Shepherd for all Christians. Reflect on your own sense of being set apart in a world that values assimilation. How can we embody the values of mobility, community, and trust in God that nomads demonstrate so well? Practical challenge. Take time to research a nomadic group like the Fulani, Tuareg, Roma, Gujar, or Navajo. I won't list them all here, close to 400. If you would like to see this list, click and join the journey on courses.nomadicpeoples.net. Register free, and you will also get our Let Nomads Move You newsletter. Read through Proverbs and see how many verses you can identify that reflect some aspect of our definition of nomad. Take time to reflect on a biblical nomad like Abraham or Moses. What does their story teach you about living distinctively in your own context? What are you learning that you can add to this section? Tell me in the comments below what lessons we can learn from nomads about being in the world but not of it. I would like to use your comments in an upcoming episode. Conclusion. Nomads have always been distinct by design, whether through their mobility, their collective mindset, or their faith. In a world that often pressures us to conform, their example challenges us to embrace our own calling as a distinct people. How might their stories move you to live differently today? Share your thoughts or questions in the comments. Consider joining us for Nomad Connect to explore this topic further. In the meantime, sign up for Let Nomads Move You to keep up to date on all things nomad. Thanks for joining me today on Let Nomads Move You. We looked at how nomads are distinct by design, not just because they move, but because of how they think, live, and relate to one another. Their identity is shaped by community, their culture resists individualism, and their values echo throughout Scripture, from Abraham and Moses to David and Jesus. So what can we take away? Nomads remind us to value our over mine, to live set apart, not isolated, and to trust God deeply on the move. That's not just for nomads. That's a challenge for all of us who want to follow the Good Shepherd. If this episode sparked something in you, don't just keep it to yourself. Follow the podcast, share it with someone, and head to courses.nomadicpeoples.net to join the email list for updates, resources, and future workshops. You can also follow us on social media at Nomadic Peoples for stories, updates, and global connections with nomadic cultures. Until next time, keep walking humbly, live set apart, and let nomads move you. Thanks for traveling with me on this episode of Let Nomads Move You. I hope it gave you a new way to see the world and your faith. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's journey. Until then, keep moving, keep learning, and stay with the shepherd.